This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Audible. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, December 17th, 2020. And my guest is the awesome Michael Josh of GadgetMatch. Hi, MJ. How are you?
Hi, Miriam. Thanks for having me. It's been a long time.
Yes, I'm really glad you're on because I know you have one of the things you want to talk about today, which is the AirPods Max.
Mm-hmm.
So just to prime you a little bit, last week we talked about the actual kind of like announcement, right? Nobody had devices yet. I had John Rediger on the show and we were making all kinds of speculations about all kinds of things. So I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. What is the deal with those? As you know, everybody's kind of like wondering about the pricing. So what's your take that now that you've used them for a bit?
It's very interesting because everybody, well, a lot of people will immediately react at Apple's pricing. But let's be honest, there's nothing really new. Apple has always been in the game of premium pricing. And they also like to, instead of just coming out with with a pair of over-ear headphones that compete with what's already in the market, Bose NC700s and Sony XM4s to name a few, I think they purposely have created a product that doesn't necessarily go toe-to-toe. It's not an apples to oranges comparison. It's quite difficult to compare. And so in a way, by doing that, they've allowed themselves to also price differently. Whether or not it is justified is up to, different people have different opinions, but they're pretty good over-ear headphones, I've got to say. I think they're more of a luxury product for those who are looking either to be seen, who want something different, who want something Apple branded, but at the same time, it doesn't have an Apple logo on it whatsoever. And for those who just want a little bit better sound.
Yeah, that's the feeling I get from a lot of the discussions and conversations I've read. And I feel like, I went into it going, I also balked at the price a little bit. I was just like, okay, the Sony's M4s, which are my go-to, I'm not wearing them right now because I want something that doesn't isolate me too much. Otherwise, I end up yelling a lot in the microphone. But they are, my reference in terms of everything, like battery life, sound quality, noise reduction, noise canceling. Until the M4s, they weren't very good for calls. That's improved a little bit, but basically they're like the universal best possible combination of things, right? And now I think they're very specific use. In pre-pandemic times, I think they were their darling of us travelers. I mean, I think all of us have a pair because of it. We had the Mark IIIs back then, but whatever. And then now I think we're using them around the house to like isolate ourselves so we can focus and whatever it might be.
Exactly.
And so
yes.
I kind of think if you look at it that perspective, of course, $550 seems high when $350 is the list price for the Sonys.
And you can get them for $278 now, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say $250 or so is the sales price. And Sony always somehow seems to have these on sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the XM4s are better than the XM3s.
They are. They're an improvement. One of my favorite things about them, I haven't really mentioned it on the show, and as a quick tangent, is that you can finally have EQ settings active when you're on lossless, which in the past you had to choose. You had to either had the EQ settings you liked. For me, I tweaked them a little bit because they're by default a little too bass heavy for me. So I like to tweak them, but I couldn't have that and have lossless Bluetooth audio before. And now I can. So I'm super excited with what Sony's done. But so I look at that and I look at the Apple AirPods Max and I'm like, ooh, that's a lot of money. But then at the same time, I got to remember this is Apple. And the design is obviously going to be premium, and it is. I mean, materials it's hard to do metal headphones. And then, I look at the feature set, and there's something that Sony still nobody really does right, which is the, connect to multiple devices, automatically switch between devices. I'm seeing it with, Theo right now with they have the M3s, and they're using them on their iPhone and their brand new MacBook Air. And they're like, it's a hassle because they have to pretty much turn off Bluetooth on one device for it to connect to the other, right?
On the XM4s, at least they have the multi-device pairing. I believe 2 devices can be paired at the same time. But even then, it's not that seamless of a transition. And of course, the benefit here is if you're an Apple user.
Right.
Because with these, you pair with one device. It's like any other Apple pairing. You bring them to 2 devices together. They will pair. Once you pair, and I have like tons of iPhones, several Macs, and several iPads, and everybody is just already immediately paired.
Right.
And Apple in such a way is I'm on my computer and I bring it close, and then all of a sudden I get this pop-up on my computer, and they're like, oh, the AirPods Max are nearby. Do you want to connect to them? And I can just connect to them. And then I lift up my iPhone, I have them on, and then maybe I play an Instagram video or a YouTube video, and the audio automatically transfers. Like, you don't have to think about these kind of things. And this is, especially if you've already bought into the Apple ecosystem, this is definitely a pro of these devices, of the AirPods Max.
Yeah, that's the feeling I get from talking to everybody. And I think that that's something you can't underestimate. Like, there's nothing out there that'll do the same thing right now in this form factor. So if you are heavily in the Apple ecosystem, it might just make sense for you to get these simply on that ease of use alone. But I don't really think of them as a different category of product than a very high-end version of this wireless ANC, high quality product. And I think that if you're looking at it like maybe this could replace studio headphones or something, that's not where you're going. Like when I'm doing a podcast, when I'm not traveling, I'm in Portland right now to take care of some things, and I'm not wearing my normal headphones. But if I wear my Beyer Dynamics normally, they're studio phones. They're wired, no ANC, open back. Like they sound fantastic, but I don't think the AirPods Max are in that league. However, you get ANC, you get wireless, you get seamless integration with the ecosystem. And I think that's kind of what you're paying extra for. And you always pay extra for Apple, 1. And 2, you're paying, I think it's personally, I feel like even though I'm not in the Apple ecosystem 100%, for those who are, I think this is a game changer. This kind of feature set of auto switching and all that just makes a huge difference. Like I see how the average user like Theo struggles with the M3s switching between devices. And of course you want that, right? So
yes, and one feature that a lot of people don't talk about is spatial audio.
Right.
And it's supposed to be, so these are not just for listening to music or for blocking out sound. It's also, Apple has also thought about them as for watching movies on your iPad or your iPhone. I wish that it worked with the Apple TV. I
was just going to say,
because I can watch my big screen, but it supports, I think, Disney Plus, Netflix. I think the Surface has to support it. But when you're watching a movie, and I've tried this, and even with the Sonys, the XM4s, number one, it kind of mimics the whole surround sound experience. The first time I put them on, I had to double take, and I was like, I asked Chai, my producer, is anything playing through my stereo speaker sound system? Because it sounds so good, and it's. And for me, I'm not an audiophile, but regardless of what kind of content I'm consuming, I want to be enveloped by the, I want the sound to wrap around me like a blanket.
Yeah, for sure.
And with the movies, I was like, wow. And then with spatial audio, I'm using the gyroscopes and other sensors on the iPad and the iPhone. When you move your head, it remembers where the audio source is coming from, which is the direction where your iPad is, for example. And so if you move your head, you can feel the sound move to the left side or to the right side, depending on where you're facing and where the iPad is. And that's pretty cool. When I put on the XM4s, I feel like the audio is just going into my ear, being pumped into my ear. Yeah, but I don't get that same surround sound-ish kind of experience. So that is another pro for these for this device, and I just wish it was available on the Apple TV.
Yeah,
maybe a new version.
I think the support for Apple TV is a big miss. I really feel that, having experienced this kind of technology when I worked at Dolby Labs, before it was something that you'd see in a consumer product, I know what it can do. And the idea is that you're wearing headphones and it feels like you're in the theater. And when you move your head in the theater, the voice, if it's in the middle of the screen, stays kind of where the screen is. So this is what it replicates. And I think it's very immersive. It's done right. And, of course, Dolby would do that well. And they have Atmos to do that for speakers and now Atmos on headphones, which, by the way, the AirPods Max support for the content that supports it on iPhones and iPad. But to me, it makes way more sense to have this when you have a big screen in front of you. And so that's why Apple TV support would make sense. On an airplane, you may be on a big 12-inch iPad Pro, and that's about as big as it's going to get. And it's kind of weird to me that here we have these brand new Macs. Like I'm actually recording with my MacBook Air M1 right now, my brand new one. And I'm like, it's such a great computer that I'm surprised they didn't include, the support for that in there. Like it's kind of amazing to me.
I have a tech question for you.
Yeah.
Would it be possible with skipping any in lieu of any of the sensors to just use a U1 chip? It doesn't have the U1 chip, neither does the Apple TV, but could you use the same U1 chip for spatial awareness?
I think you can use, there's all kinds of solutions here. Basically, as long as you can locate the two devices from one to the other, both in distance and in orientation. So you could do it with a combination of things, including radio, like the U1, that chip. It's very possible. Like Sony supports spatial audio on the M3s and M4s, but they're not focused on video as much. They're focused on like high quality audio, spatial audio. And to me, I think that's a miss for Sony because Sony is a huge player in the movie field. They should have totally done this. Like Apple seems to have beat them to the most compelling use of spatial audio, which is in movies and video and film, right?
Right.
So I think that's another thing that's really unique here. So I think you're paying for all those things. Although I think spatial audio 5 years from now will be pretty commonplace for most people. And I think maybe this is, I want to say that like easy pairing between multiple devices will be commonplace for most people in 5 years. But the AirPods original are now almost 5 years old, and they've initiated this idea of easy pairing. And I think we've seen similar things in other ecosystems, like if you're in the Samsung ecosystem or the Huawei ecosystem, but we haven't seen like a Bluetooth universal solution adopted as part of the Bluetooth standard yet. And I think that's what's missing because, I hate to say this, I use my M4 with all kinds of devices and I can't stay in the Sony ecosystem for this. And that's the one thing that for me is a challenge with these AirPods Max. By the way, I've ordered a pair. I'm lucky that I ordered early enough that I'm getting it early January. I'm not sure I'm going to keep them, but this is more for me to test as an audio lover. I want to check it out. So I'm going to let folks know. And of course, I have an iPhone. That's the only thing I can use with spatial audio. I don't have an iPad and I have a MacBook. And that's why I'm bummed they didn't do the MacBook.
Which color did you order?
I'm boring. I ordered space gray because I feel
space gray looks really good, though.
Yeah.
It's really, I don't like reviewing black devices because they're not as sexy on TV, but these space gray ones look really, really nice. And you can kind of customize the cups as well, which is also pretty cool.
Yeah. I think for me, what it was like the other colors were not available. Like I would have had to wait till March, right, already. But like I think I ordered the day after it was announced. So if I had ordered right away, I might have gotten them. But
I'm a little bit pissed because this is my review device, the personal one that I ordered. I ordered 5 minutes after the announcement.
Wow.
And it was slated for the delivery on day one. But FedEx...
What is day one, by the way?
Which was the 15th. The 15th of December.
Oh, wow.
And the window was December 15 to 17. And all my friends who ordered like an hour later got theirs on the 15th. And mine is showing... on the 14th, the label was created, but FedEx has never picked it up. And so it's kind of, Apple says to contact FedEx, FedEx says to contact Apple. I don't know where it is. And it's, so that's where I am. But they're pricey, and if you buy those cups as well, pricier. But it's interest. It's not something that Apple officially talks about, but you can actually order the ear cushions separately in different colors.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
then for like $69, I believe, which is cool because the full leather ear cups on the Sonys will also over time kind of start to peel.
Exactly. I don't know if you can replace them on the Sonys, but I'm used to studio
Not
phones.
on the Sonys.
Oh, okay.
On the Bose ones, Bose sells replacements for the NC700.
Interesting.
Sony doesn't. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever used the Sonys long enough. Like I keep getting review units for all the updates. So we'll see how the M3s that Theo's using that I've used so heavily already, and they're in mint condition right now. Let's see how long they last, especially with the cushions. For cushions in studio phones, which is my experience so far, they always are interchangeable. And frankly, for people balking at $69, even like a relatively reasonable pair of like AKGs or Bear Dynamic or Sennheisers, you're going to spend $30 to $40 for the ear cup replacements normally.
I mean,
right?
Apple sells cases, leather cases for $50, $60 as well. It's not.
It's not bad.
That said, I don't want to sound like an Apple apologist here. I would have loved if they included. I wish it was USB-C. I wish that they would have included a, the cable, a 3.5 millimeter cable for.
I agree.
I mean, I know iPhones don't have a headphone jack, so maybe it doesn't make sense in the Apple world. But maybe if you were on a plane, you can buy that for, I think, less than $40 for, I think, $35 for that cable, because they sell that cable. I wish that was included in the box.
I think Belkin has one as well that's cheaper, by the way.
So, there are ways around this, but, little things like that, it would have been nice to have. But it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's really well made, very comfortable.
I think one of the things we should talk about is that they are, I mean, I don't have mine to judge yet, but they are heavier, right? And so these are really around the house or when you're traveling. Don't expect to go jogging or working out with these, I think. You might be able to, but I don't think that's what they're designed for.
I don't think that's what they're designed for. Let me just start by saying, when I look at the Bose and the Sonys, I've never really complained about them. I've never said, oh, they look cheap, they look plasticky, even if like the Sonys are all plastic.
Yeah, they're high quality plastic.
That's never been a complaint. But when you have to compare as a reviewer putting together your video, and you are made to compare, and then they do kind of look cheap, because compared to the aluminum finish and the stainless steel band and this nice mesh canopy. I've been thinking about it, and in a way, it's almost like a fashion accessory too.
Yeah.
And I can see like the Kardashians, for lack of a better comparison, but like, the influencer types and the fashionistas really wanting to rock these because they're that kind of device.
Yeah.
And they exude that kind of, emotion.
And they have no Apple logo, which is kind of amazing too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You just, when you know. It's that kind of thing. It's and Apple didn't really feel the need to plaster. I looked again, and the Shures, the Bose, the Sonys all have logos on them, and it would make the perfect sense if Apple actually put a logo, like, because this finish is just like a MacBook Pro, MacBook Air, iPad Air finish. It's exactly the same finish. So to have that little logo there, but it's nice and discreet, and that's what I like about them too, is that there's no seams. It's just all one, like, clean surface.
Yeah, they look really great. I think for me, design-wise, the only thing I really wish is, I know they can't make them too much lighter. I've had some heavy headphones. It's not a big deal for me. I think it's just more people have to understand these are not active headphones. These are travel and at-home headphones, and that's what they're designed for. And I think for that, the weight's not an issue. I think their design is really iconic. I feel like they've taken a lot of the cues from old headphones and modernized it and Appleized it in a very, very clever way. But my only big beefs on design is, USB-C. Well, the weight is not a huge deal. USB-C, I think, is a big problem, because if you look at the rest of the industry, really, like, that's where we're going. Even Beats are now using USB-C, right? So it's like come on, right? Like
That's definitely
real.
One of my biggest complaints, but at the same time, I was thinking about it. If you most likely own an iPhone, and those come with lightning cables. So if you were traveling, then I guess it makes sense.
But the iPad doesn't, and the Macs don't. So I'm thinking like
that's true. So you have those cables as well.
If you're that heavily in the Apple ecosystem, you probably have a USB-C device from Apple already.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. And then the other thing it's just weird because we know Lightning is on its way out. We are pretty sure that next year's iPhones will have ports.
Won't have a port.
Will have the MagSafe wireless clip-on charger, or probably a faster wireless charging version of that. And honestly, I'm perfectly okay with that. I think that's the future. I absolutely feel that, like in the past, if Apple had switched to USB-C on the iPhone 10, great, but they didn't. And at this point, Lightning needs to freaking die. And that's why I'm annoyed that they launched a brand new product that's going to be in the Apple history
in circulation
for 5 years.
Yes, and not going to be replaced by users for like 3 to 5 years. Agreed.
And has this stupid, pointless, old and bad connector. So I'm annoyed with that. And I'm also annoyed with the lack of Apple TV support, as we discussed. I'm less annoyed with the pricing because I look at it as you're paying the Apple tax in a way. You're paying the premium luxury goods because it's so well-designed tax, and you're paying for those software features in a way right now.
So it's interesting. Well, you speak about software, and earlier you were talking about Sony's the equalizer options in the app. You don't have there's no separate app for you to be able to dive into all the settings of the AirPods Max.
I mean, it's Apple. What do you expect, right?
Exactly. So Apple uses computational audio is what they call it. And basically there are microphones in the headphones listening how many thousand times per second and basically tweaking the sound based on what Apple feels is are the best equalizer settings for the content that you're consuming.
Right.
And I guess for the average, again, these are not for audiophiles. As much as neither are the Sonys, but I mean, a Sony user, an Android user would love to go in and tweak settings, but I think for the average user, having someone else do the thinking for you is probably a good thing. Just like for taking photos, how all the algorithms decide how the photo should actually look like at the end.
Yeah, I'm not too worried. I think the way I'm looking at it is I'm either going to like them out of the box or I'm not, sound-wise.
So I was pretty confident I would like the sound before they arrived because the HomePods sound really good. Even the HomePods Mini sound really good. So Apple has a history. And remember, what was the name of that device? Was it called the Apple Hi-Fi?
Yeah, the iPod Hi-Fi, I think it was.
That speaker where
the speaker where you docked your iPod into it. Yeah, with the 30 pin.
And Apple has always had a good history of great sound. So I knew these would sound great, and they don't disappoint.
I mean, honestly, for me right now, like of all the audio devices Apple makes currently, not talking about Beats, I'm taking that apart because I don't like the Beats sound.
Me too.
Although I hear good things about the latest products. I haven't tested them, so I don't know. But I know that the AirPods sound like crap, the original. I mean, the thing is that they don't sound like crap. I'm exaggerating. They sound okay. They are acceptable. They get the job done, but they're not spectacular in any way. They just kind of cruise by on being mediocre at best. The AirPods Pro, I think, step things up a notch significantly, but still don't meet my standards. I'm hoping the AirPod Max meet my standards, but my standards are really high. So that's why I'm probably going to return them. Plus, I don't have enough investment in the Apple ecosystem, fully completely integrated to really justify it. But I want to try it because I want to see what this machine learning audio, like this AI computation, because I think that there's so much that I worked on at Dolby back in the days that was kind of a preamble to what we're going to see in audio in the next decade that is, basically all about that, measuring the inside of your ear with microphones to figure out what's the best sound for you, at the same time taking your ambient noise levels into consideration and adjusting the audio. You can do all of that. Sounds gimmicky, folks, but there is real science behind it. And if we can do it right, and that's why I'm super curious to see how right Apple gets it, which is why I put $600 of my own money down with taxes in California for something that normally I would just hysterically point and laugh at and go, there's no way I'm buying this. But I feel like, it's a milestone in a way, technologically speaking, And I think that we can't dismiss that. Like a lot of people gloss over that because a lot of people use their smartphone every day, not realizing how much freaking engineering went into them. You know?
Right. And as techies, it's our, we enjoy being able to dig deeper into all the magic that goes behind the scene, that goes on behind the scenes. But I think being able to just create that experience for users and having that's what technology is supposed to be, right? It's not supposed to be complicated. And when all of this can, happen behind the scenes and you don't really care because you're just listening to great audio. And if you want to watch a movie, it's surround sound in your ears as well. That for me is, and then when you want to transfer between devices, it just works, that's what you're paying for, I think. My one last complaint about them are the case. And I know a lot of people have, there are a lot of memes going around saying that they look like bras or all sorts of different, comparisons.
It's funny you bring that up because that's exactly the last thing I was going to talk about. I was like,
really?
I mean, the bra or the whatever handbag, my beef with it is
like a designer handbag.
I know. What my beef with that is not so much that they made a case because they included it. So you're not paying for that, which I thought it was an accessory originally. I didn't realize it was included. Yeah. Just in case you guys, this is an audio podcast, Michael Josh, MJ is teasing me right now by showing me his blue AirPods Max within the case. And the case looks super nice. But I don't think that case is going to age very well.
No.
And I think that
it doesn't really cover it entirely. That's my biggest problem.
There needs to be an off button. I hate to say this.
Okay.
I don't think people are going to, if you leave your desk and you're going grocery shopping for whatever, you're walking, you're running some errands, you're going to come back in 3 hours. You want to be able to put them down on your desk without putting them in the case and maybe hold two, but if you can hold the crown button and the extra button together and it turns off, that's all we need. We don't need anything super fancy. That's how Sony's work. You hold a button.
So what Miriam is saying is that there's no off button. And when you take them off, they'll pause the content that you're consuming and it goes into low power mode. But when you put them into the case, they call it the smart case, then it goes into ultra power saving
basically
mode.
Almost no power use. Yeah.
Almost no power. I haven't done enough testing because in the test that I've done, an hour it drains 1% with or without the case, without it being in the case.
Right.
Maybe over a longer period. I believe it waits for a 2-hour, 3-hour period, then it really goes into that power mode.
See, all they really need to do, there's two things, right?
You know what? I was thinking about this though, Miriam.
Yeah.
And Apple fanboy or not, I was like, when was the last time I actually took off, I actually powered off any of my other noise canceling headphones? I never do. And then I usually just end up, I was like, oh, they switched off by themselves. So I don't know really how big of a deal it is, but
I think it's not a huge deal if maybe in the Apple settings there was a timer you could set, say turned off after 5 minutes, turn off after a half an hour, an hour. I give us 3 choices: an hour, half an hour,
iPhone.
2 hours. Because I think the default's 2 right now. Because look, on the Sonys, they give you that option. And I have to set to 5 minutes because it's literally, I walk away from my computer so much. And, when you're flying, as much as you and I used to, firing up your headphones just as you're getting on a 10-hour flight and realizing, crap, I forgot to charge them, is really something you don't want. And you're going to say, well, you should have the discipline of checking all your devices. Yeah. When you travel as much as we do, trust me, you don't charge everything before you get on the plane. You charge stuff on the plane, But
so in the whole spirit of someone else making the decisions for you, this is one of those things, right? Because it's just turn it off when I don't need it because I don't have the bandwidth to deal with figuring out, have I powered it off or should I power it off or so yes. That said, going on a trip, if the fast charging is pretty decent, for a 5-minute charge you can get about 1.5 hours, so it's not that bad.
No, it's not a big deal. But it's just, I just wish Lightning, and I wish that you could just turn them off somehow, or at least it doesn't even have to be a switch. I think a combination of, how there's hidden features in the iPhone, you can hold 2 buttons and it resets, all these cool little things like that.
So there are 2 buttons on them.
Yeah.
Well, one is an actual button, which is basically toggling the noise cancellation on, the transparency mode on. And the other one is also pretty cool, and maybe it's something that you'd like to talk about too. Instead of having touch gestures, so there are no touch gestures,
Right.
you have, they've created a larger version of the digital crown that's on the Apple Watch.
I think that's really cool, actually, because honestly, I like a good knob.
Yeah. For me, the problem with touch gestures are that sometimes they're finicky. And because you don't get enough haptic feedback, they're finicky. I'm just being nice. But you don't have haptic feedback. I was like, have I done it yet, or have I done something? And so I like the feel that that haptic feedback of twisting rotating the crown.
The ticking sound of feel.
I'm curious what you think, because I don't mind, but some of my friends are complaining about the fact that the controls are on the top of the cans.
Personally, I feel like this doesn't matter.
I can just do this, right?
I don't think it's going to matter to me.
I'm not struggling to reach the up, and I feel like the reason why they're on top is that when you place them on a table this way, there's nothing sticking out, because the digital crown is rather large. It sticks out, which is good too, because you want buttons that stick out, because you want to be able to feel for them blindly.
I think the other reason with their design, their buttons and the crown specifically having a rotating dial, like a volume button, basically, if you lean your shoulder, like your head to the shoulder, you're going to probably trigger the buttons.
Yes.
And I think that's why it makes a lot of sense. And personally, I don't really see a problem with having it on top.
I don't see a problem as well.
But I can understand how some people are used to the controls on the bottom, like on the Sonys. Like for me, it's on the left, right? So I'm going to have to adjust to that as well. But the other thing that I'm surprised that Apple didn't do is a automatic detect left and right thing. That would be such an Apple thing to do that, us audio people, like I do it without even noticing that. I'll check the left and right on my headphones. On the Sonys, it's easy because the right is always red. On all Sony products, anything they've ever done has a little red thing that says R for the right. And so it's really color-coded and nice. But I feel like Apple would have done magic, like somehow with some gyroscopes or something to detect the front of your face to the back of your face and automatically switch the left and right, In the same way as you can select which arm you want to wear the Apple Watch on, you could, you could have decide where you want the controls. I think that would be really, really cool. And I don't know why they didn't do that.
So you don't even have to flip them around, basically. Yeah. They flip it around for you.
That's what needs to happen next, Apple, because that's very Apple, right? That would be very Apple,
AI should be able to figure that out.
But
for me, I just look for the digital crown. It's big enough, so I know that the crown goes on the right.
Yep. Yeah. Well, listen, we should move on to other topics because we got mostly news things that are like, we can't really go into great depths because there are more things we've read about.
I will admit that I've been it's been a long year.
Oh my God.
And I've kind of been in the mode where I know I'm kind of winding down and trying to get into a 2 weeks of relaxation before the next year begins. And unfortunately, that's the life that we lead. And I'm just trying to finish my backlog. And so I've been trying to block out as much as I can things that are not necessary or things that are either rumors or arrangements for CES and announcements that are about to happen, because it gives me anxiety thinking about it. But I'm happy to talk about some of this stuff.
We only have one leak and one rumor. The rest is actual news that we can talk about with authority. So I think we'll be okay. One is a concept. I mean, you can just kind of share your thoughts.
No, I watched that video and
it's cool, right? The Oppo Nendo slide phone, I guess it's called.
See, for me, we've seen many different experiments over the last 2 years. And I feel like in the times that we live, the holy grail for mobile computing is true multitasking. And I think that's really what people are trying to solve with bigger screens, with double screens, with foldable screens. It's really being able to do multiple things at once on your smartphone. And so I think that's the whole premise of this. It's like it folds into a notepad and all sorts of different
I like
things.
That they have buttons along the side of each module that when, depending which configuration you have it in, like turn into like the shutter button, the play pause button for your music, or the left and right trigger keys for games. Folks, it's hard to conceptualize this in an audio podcast. I have a link in the show notes to the Oppo Nendo slide phone from Engadget. You can read about it on any publication. I generally put down the links of the first occurrence of a news item that I find. Check it out. It's a crazy idea. It's basically a very long and slender folding display that's folds in multiple spots, so you can configure the phone into
multiple spots, almost like links on a watch.
Correct. Yes.
But longer and wider. I guess for me, it's like, I guess, with Samsung, with those modular TVs, I guess it is possible to kind of make it look seamless even if they're like joints, multiple joints. Yeah. When they come together, they still look like one seamless display. That's probably the challenge there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the way you do this today would be with a flexible OLED and having a fold at each spot. And, this is very much a concept. We're not going to see this probably ever. No. But the design behind, I think, is very clever. And it's we keep saying phones are boring. And I think this really shows you where this new form factors could take us with having these new technologies like folding displays and stuff. And it's nice to see Oppo do something kind of more designy for a change rather than like, we're the tech giants of China. Like they're very techy normally in their stuff. Yes. And so it's kind of nice to see something that's more like, it reminds me of Nokia in the late 2000s, when we'd go to MWC and they'd show us like, this phone looks like a bar of soap, but it's actually made of a silicone material you can bend. And the whole phone is bendy. And you're like, why are you doing this, Nokia?
This is what I live for, though. And I remember watching the video and just thinking to myself, wow, at least, there's still a lot of ideas out there. We haven't gotten to a point where things have just gone stagnant, and at least there's a lot to be excited about in the years to come.
For sure.
I just hope something sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. The next thing that caught my eye this week was an interview with Pete Lau by Raymond Wong at Input Mag. And I hear that apparently there was a bunch of media were invited to interview or talk to Pete. I feel a little jealous there because I know Pete personally, like a lot of us do, right? And I didn't get invited to this. I was like, what?
Me and Pete are always talking with having had a few drinks, but I always enjoy being able to, Pete and Carl, being able to talk to someone who's that high up in a company. Yeah. And it's funny because like I don't have any interest, and people think I play favorites, but whenever I'm speaking to a brand, I speak as a consumer and as a fan of that brand, and in the interest of just getting better products. So I always use these opportunities to kind of like tell them what I think they should be doing, kind of like just giving consulting for free.
We all do, yeah, for sure.
And I miss that. But these are things that we used to be able to do when we could travel.
I think the other thing a lot of our audience doesn't really necessarily understand is that if we bitch about a product a lot, it's generally not because we don't like it as much as we think they could have done a better job, and we see a hole in their strategy that we think maybe they overlooked or had to somehow overlook. Like sometimes they have external forces.
Yeah.
But I've been bitching about OnePlus a lot ever since the Nord N10 5G, which I reviewed for Hot Hardware and for Geekspin for Elena's publication. And that phone is such a miss for OnePlus compared to what Realme came out with 2 weeks later, which is the Realme 7 5G, which is a way better phone for way less money. It feels to me like what OnePlus would do at that price point. Yet it's a Realme phone. And it feels like there is definitely a shift happening. And, we've discussed this on the podcast many times, but what I thought that Raymond captured so well on his story and input from his talk with Pete Lau was, some of these things that are changing at OnePlus. And I think I am confident that the OnePlus 9 Pro is going to be my next phone, in the sense that the 8 Pro was my phone this year because I finally left Pixel because for many reasons. But yeah, I feel that OnePlus has nailed the flagship and will continue to. And I'm talking about the real flagship. Like I'm willing to pay $1,000 for a OnePlus phone. Not everybody is. I hope they don't lose the plot on their bread and butter, which I consider the $700 price point, like the
Nord.
600. No, I'm thinking more like the 8, 8T, 9.
Oh, okay.
That still a flagship, but not is missing some features to cut costs, kind of like what Samsung did this year with the S20 Fan Edition, which is
doing so well.
Which is out OnePlusing OnePlus in many ways,
Yes.
right? So I hope they don't screw that up. But what I'm much more concerned about is going forward is their strategy with Nord. The original Nord is a masterpiece of a phone. But as I was reviewing it, in my head, my gears were spinning and I was doing kind of like the BOM, the bill of materials analysis. And I'm like, there is no way they can be making money here. This phone is a OnePlus 8 with a 765G, essentially. And at the price they were selling it for, less than 500 US, I was like, they are just flexing their muscles to show what they can do, but they can't sustain this. And sure enough, the Nord N10 5G comes out, and it's cheap and overpriced, and cheap in a bad way, cheap for OnePlus. So I think what's happening here is, and some of this is touched upon in this story, is that I think OnePlus is kind of navigating and figuring out where they fit themselves in the BBK group and in the general phone world in this lower price tier, right? I think they're well established with the pseudo flagship and real flagship, but I think they're still trying to figure out where Nord goes. And right now, Realme is trying to do the same. I think Realme, I've talked to the head of India Realme guy. I can't remember his name. I feel kind of silly for not remembering, but he briefed me personally on the Realme 7 5G, and I think their strategy is to out OnePlus in that price range. So I think we're going to see OnePlus probably evolve more into a Western Oppo competitor, is kind of how I feel.
It's the growth, following the growth of OnePlus. These are definitely growing pains. These are good problems to have.
Yes.
It's very interesting to have followed their evolution as a company. Definitely I can see their focus is the US and Europe.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and there's so many different ways to do this. I personally felt betrayed when they started going after higher price points.
Okay.
And for me, I feel like the Nord is the direction that they should be. But if you're telling me that it's not sustainable, then maybe this is
I think that they could do something like, I think if the problem with the Nord, it was too close to the 8 because it's an 8 with a lesser chip. I think that if you look at what Realme is doing in the 7 series in general, but the 7 5G in particular, it is £100 UK less than the OnePlus Nord N10 5G, and it's better in every way. And if I look at the gears spin about the bill of materials in my head, they're still making money. So the OnePlus Nord N10 5G is really just like, if they have a bunch of sliders they can adjust, and one slider is profit, they slid the profit slider way too far on the N10 5G because it's not. I didn't like that one. And in that sense, they had to slide the other things down to basically make it not a OnePlus phone.
Well, the good news is that they're ready to go. I mean, they have an opportunity to kind of reset, to recalibrate, because the Nord wasn't even in their portfolio at the start of last year.
But
so
the
it's
Nord
kind
is
of like,
definitely my favorite, like this year in terms of like bang for the buck. But I think it's a one-trick pony. Like I don't think they can replicate it.
So it's fun. It's interesting because in the Android world, I keep saying the everyday user doesn't need the top of the line Snapdragon processor. It's overkill.
Yeah.
And so just give me, cut the way I would rather cut costs is give me a 765G. Right?
Correct.
And I think that's the way to go. And this year we saw a lot of that because I feel like this mid-tier affordably priced.
Yep.
And Google even pursued that with the Pixel, right? They were like, oh, we're not, Google is the best case for this. Like, we're not going to even
try
give you a top of the line Snapdragon processor. And it's very smart because there's a lot you can do with machine learning, computational stuff, even with mid-tier chip. It's funny though, because when you compare it to the Apple world, you have Apple putting their top of the line processor on all smartphones across the board, including the SE.
Oh, I know,
which
it's crazy
at that time. And so it's kind of like, so the question really is, where do you make the cuts? And I think that's what we're going to see next year, is that smartphone brands are going to navigate this problem because they really need to cater to this price point.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
There's so many disruptors right now, and Apple is doing a great job at disrupting.
Yeah. I feel like OnePlus can certainly find its spot in a 765G type product. And they did with the Nord, but it's not sustainable. So they need to find a way to make it sustainable. And I'm encouraging them to go lower end as well. Like they tried with the N10 and N100, but I feel that they need to see what Realme is doing, because Realme is doing it right and they're not doing it right. Somehow they missed that boat. Parallel to all that, for my personal needs, I feel that, and for I think a lot of the Western North America, Europe-based early adopters, tech savvy folk that have the money, we've all been waiting for OnePlus to make a no bars hold phone, and the 8 Pro is that phone, and we got it, and I don't want them to stop doing that. I don't think they should do more than one. I don't think it should be their focus, as in their focus should be in that mid-range, but I feel that they need to show off that they can be in bed with iPhone 12, Galaxy S21, and,
which is what they've tried for the last 2-3 years. When they started increasing pricing, they were really going after the Samsung. But
they were always missing features, whereas this time, you look at the 8 Pro, right, and wireless charging, one of the best cameras of this year. Like, a lot of people don't understand how good the camera is on that phone, because they're thinking, well, it's just an 8 improved. But the regular 8 camera is just basically a rehash of the 7T, which is the same camera in the Nord, the same camera in the 8T. It's a good camera, but it's not impressive. The 8 Pro has that crazy, IMX689 that we saw in the Find X2 Pro. That sensor has only been used in 2 phones, and it kicks so much butt. So, that's kind of, I want more of that. And I know it's going to happen, but I'm really thinking that what came out of this conversation that Raymond had with Pete Lau was that they know that they have to adjust course. I felt like a lot of humility in Pete's answers of we've kind of had some growing pains this year, and we're aware of it. And what came out of this, which is kind of fun, is that they are actually indeed working on a smartwatch, which, after using their buds, which I thought were great, I feel like I would love to have an affordable smartwatch. I hope it doesn't run Wear OS. I kind of want it to be like my Huawei Watch GT2 Pro, which I'm wearing right now, which is essentially a fitness band on steroids. No apps, no nothing, but really long battery life, really great feature set. That's kind of what I'd love them to do, because I've seen them do that. Then again, Oppo did a really great watch this year running Wear OS. It's probably, I think, the best Wear OS watch I've used in a while.
Right.
But it's Wear OS, right? It's flawed, right? By default. You can only... And
it looks so much like the Apple Watch.
Put so much lipstick on a pig, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. But anyway, speaking
it's good to see where they're going, and I don't mind the mistakes that they've made. They have a great community, and they mean well, and they have the power of BBK. They can afford to experiment.
Yeah.
And make these mistakes.
I think don't count a OnePlus out just yet. I think just be patient. Sure. I'm very frustrated with that right now after the Nord N10 5G, but I also have to remind myself that, if Realme did it right, then BBK Group can do it right, which means that then Oppo and or Vivo and or OnePlus can adjust as well. And so, but the smartwatch is good news. And then the other big thing that came out was we've got pretty much a full leak of the OnePlus 9 now, full photos and videos and the whole thing. And the camera pod looks, at least aesthetically, like there's some serious oomph under there. And that's got me excited, because one of the things that I've always thought is that for a lot of people, the OnePlus 8 or 8T was enough phone, but that the camera could be a little better. So if they can pull that off, with the 9, kudos to them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. We'll see.
We'll see.
They really just need to be able to compete in the camera space for them to really be in that top.
And we know they can with the 8 Pro. So let's see some of that 8 Pro technology kind of trickle down. I would like to see that. And then speaking of, flagships, last week we talked about this, where we talked about how there's lots of indications that the Galaxy Note will no longer be the only, or rather that the S21 will be one of the devices that supports the S Pen, in the same way as almost all of LG's phones this year supported a Wacom pen. I think that those rumors that the Note was going to go away, I was willing to buy them, but now we have more rumors coming back that are saying that no, the Note series is going to stay, but it's not going to be the only S Pen product, and that potentially they might scale down the maybe scale down the Note as just one model or something. And honestly, after the Note 20 Ultra, which was my favorite Samsung phone, well, the Fan Edition is up there too. But I think that if you want like a westernized Android phone that really ticks all the boxes, that, especially in the US, supports all the bands and everything, nothing can touch the Note 20 Ultra. I never use the S Pen on it, but the camera is so good. The phone is so well designed and aesthetically pleasing to me. Compared to the S20 Ultra, which was kind of like mad to me, I kind of was bummed that the Note might go away. I hope that they have a slightly different product with a slightly different industrial design that's a flagship, that's a Samsung thing,
It's interesting. There was the Note 20, the non-Ultra.
Yeah, right.
Got so much flack because of its pricing and its build.
You liked it a lot, though, right?
I did, and it's maybe it needed to have been branded as something else. Maybe that was the thing, because the S20 Fan Edition did so well. And it was almost like that. I feel like there's a space in the market for it because not everyone can afford a top of the line.
No,
Ultra.
and actually kind of was bummed, in fact, by the Note 20 non-Ultra that it wasn't a $700, $800 phone. Like, I felt like we need an affordable Note. Like, we need, how the S20 started at like, $999 or whatever, and it quickly went down in price, and granted the Note 20 now is on sale everywhere, but I feel like we need Samsung to make the S line and the Note line spread between
needs to be a differentiation.
$750 to $1,500. Yes. Like, I know it's a lot of spread, but you have to understand that, they've kind of done that. When you look at the S20, S20 Plus, S20 Ultra, S20 Fan Edition, you have all that range, you have that reach. So I want to see Note do something like, we don't need that many units, but I think maybe one that's $1,250, that's top of the line, no bars hold, and one that's $850, $650, $750.
What Apple does is they just do the 2 or 3 SKUs, and then they'll keep around the 2, like the 10R. So the 10R is $499, the 11 is $599.
Yeah.
And then and then go $699, $799, $899.
And I think Samsung did that. They kept the S20e around for quite a while. So I think we're going to see what happens, but I'm glad to hear that, those rumors might have been a little premature that there would be no Note at all. And in a way, that's good because it's hard.
I thought the Note might have, breathed this last breath because of, thinking about using an S Pen on the Fold makes more sense. And maybe that's the future of the Note line. But at the same time, I don't think the technology is there yet because, with that screen protector.
Oh yeah, no, we still that's still something that's up in the air, but I still feel that the S Pen should be available across like a whole breadth of phones, even if it doesn't come with it, even if there's no silo. I think some device should have the silo, come with the pen, and really kind of be like, this is an S Pen device. But I think that in the same way as LG supports Wacom pens on the V60 and the Velvet and the Wing, even the Wing support, at least on the main display, it's like, why not? Like, I think having that option, you want a silo ideally, but like people use the iPads with the Apple Pen, and some people don't lose their Apple Pen. So I think, it'd be interesting to see what Samsung can do here because they have so much expertise in that field.
And it looks like we'll find out sooner than we thought.
I know, right? Like, I can't believe that the rumors are for launch so soon. This January 14th or something are the rumors.
I just know it's early. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like basically right after CES is what I'm hearing.
So,
I don't know.
I'm just getting anxiety thinking about it.
Yeah, me too. I was kind of annoyed, frankly. I was hoping that, for once, because CES is virtual, it would be a low effort and, thing for us, so, relatively speaking, and that we would have a bit of a break finally. This year has not let off.
I think I worked harder this year.
I have like 20 videos left to edit. I have some videos left to edit that I'm wondering if I should even publish now because they're like from June. I have so much stuff to finish. I still have 2 stories to write for the end of the year. I'm just like, please, can we have a break now? Like, I was excited when I got the Poco M3 from Xiaomi like 2 weeks ago, but I'm like, guys, it's December. Like, can you please not send me review units anymore? Can we take a break?
Yeah.
Influencer, YouTuber / journalist problems here we're talking about.
I try not to complain about it because
I know, right?
I have a lot to be thankful for of a job, but it's been a it's I think I've worked harder this year
Me too. Yeah.
because I've only stayed home, and so the devices just continually be sent, and then also having much more time to focus and not have to worry about jet lag and getting on a plane, and packing and whatnot. I'm able to really just spend more time to deep dive into my reviews. I've been doing mostly only reviews,
Yep.
and then doing 15 to 20-minute videos that really answer questions. And I feel like I'm doing a better job in fulfilling my purpose of helping people, get buying advice. But it's been very exhausting.
Exactly. I feel like that felt very challenged this year in a very positive way. Like from a personal level, I feel like I've done some really great work. I've written like something like 40 or 50 reviews across all the publications versus maybe 2 or 3 normally. Like normally it's just the podcast and my YouTube channel. This year it's been podcast, YouTube channel, and a ton of, reviews that I've written, these 3,000 word reviews. And I love it. I feel very fulfilled. But at the same time, I'm like, I feel like I've overworked this year, even though this was the opportunity to take a break in many ways,
Yep.
So, but you and I both have M1 based devices, MacBooks, etc.
Yes, I'm using it right now. Did you?
Yeah.
Did you go ahead and buy the 16 gig? I was in such a hurry because I wanted to get it right away, but I kind of regret it because I want the idea of that unified memory on the 16 gig model appeals to me. And we travel. The reason why I'm so excited about M1, you get my face just lit up, is because all these years, because we record podcasts, we edit videos, we edit photos, and I love the MacBook Air.
Me
too. But I just know, to be honestly, that if I took it to IFA or to any trade show, that it might not be powerful enough to do everything that I need it to do.
I think that's no longer true.
And that's why when the M1 got announced, and I was like, wow, this is finally a device, that slim and light device that is powerful enough for, I'm not editing, 4K footage. But it's enough to do a lot of what I do. And that's why I'm so excited.
Yeah, we covered it last week with John Redinger. We basically reviewed our individual MacBook Airs on the air, on the show. And the reason I'm bringing it up is simply to let people know that the build of Mozilla Firefox and of Microsoft Office are now officially non-beta available for the M1 chips. I've been running the Firefox build, the beta, for since I got my MacBook Air M1, so about 2 weeks.
Have you switched to the Chrome M1 as well?
I also did switch to the Chrome M1. So I've been basically, the only thing that I'm benefiting here from is my Microsoft Office is now M1. But before that, pretty much all my web browsers were M1. And I have to say, having used Firefox for ARM for a while on the Mac, it's rock solid. So if you guys are waiting to upgrade, because you're worried about betas being unstable. I was basically on the daily build, so I was bleeding edge and I had no issues. So I think you're all good. I just want to bring it up because the other news this week that was interesting was that, Windows on ARM has been kind of struggling in the sense that Apple just showed them how to do it real bad.
It's such a quick transition, isn't it?
But Apple's pretty good at that. They've done it twice before. But the point is, it puts a bad light on Microsoft, Qualcomm, and manufacturers of ARM Windows devices because it's taken them until now to finally have an x64, so 64-bit x86 emulation running on Windows on ARM. So that's good news to me that it's finally there, but it seems like too little too late. Unless they decide to crank the knob up next year with some new chips from Qualcomm that can compete with the M1, and that the manufacturers that are so in bed with Intel right now can finally wake up and realize, look, Apple has shown us the way. I'm thinking ASUS, maybe not HP and Dell, because they're kind of traditional American companies, but I'm thinking maybe the Lenovo's or the ASUS's of the world can be hey, maybe Intel, you're not so hot after all. Maybe we need to get into the ARM bandwagon more seriously and either talk to Qualcomm or to another ARM manufacturer like MediaTek. Because I have a Chromebook MediaTek, that little Lenovo one that we all got from MediaTek recently.
MediaTek Day.
Dude, I can't believe that thing only has 4 gigs of RAM. I can run so many tabs before this thing starts to die. It's kind of impressive. So, it's just some good news to see that we finally have this ARM universe in the notebook side of things that is at least very viable on Apple and hopefully getting more viable on Windows, I'm happy about it.
There's been a lot of great stuff out of this year.
Absolutely.
And it makes me so excited about next year.
And then, speaking of chips, Qualcomm announced very quietly the new Snapdragon 678. So many 6s and 7s and 8s in their chips names right now. This is a kind of a follow-up on an older chip, the Snapdragon 675. Honestly, there's nothing too much to talk about here. This is not like the 690. It doesn't have 5G. But it should be an affordable 4G chip for that $200 price point. It's good news because, the reality is you see what's available for $200 right now, and it's pretty sad. And what we've seen, the revolution we've seen around the $500, $400 sweet spot, like Pixel 4a 350, really amazing phone. I'm hoping this shifts downward to the $200 range in the next 2 years. And right now we don't have the chips for that. Like we need them. Like the 690 I reviewed on the Nord N10 5G, and it doesn't feel like a OnePlus in terms of speed anymore. And I knew it would be a bit compromised, but the Dimensity 800U on the Realme 7 5G feels snappier with Realme's UI 1.0. So I know that OnePlus can do something there, and they might be maybe ditching Qualcomm for once. And I don't know if they, definitely MediaTek's doing something exciting here because
they are, and I'm actually working on a video comparing the Qualcomm Velvet to the MediaTek Velvet.
Oh yeah, I've got both as well. It's kind of surprising, right? I've ran some benchmarks and I was like, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. There's some areas where the Qualcomm does better, but I was like, for bang for buck, I would not hesitate to recommend the MediaTek chip in 2020 and 2021 for sure.
Absolutely, 100%. The 800U just blew on the Realme 7 5. It just blows me away in terms of performance. It's not even 1000 series Dimensity, and it's just when I ran benchmarks on it, it's just skimming close, very close, like super close, faster than 690 and close to 765. And the one thing on the Velvet, the Dimensity 1000C or whatever it is that surprised me the most was machine learning. Have you run machine learning benchmarks on that thing? It's off the charts. It's way better than Qualcomm. It's the only area where I think that it beats Qualcomm like reliably. The rest is kind of, again, skimming the 765G. So I
for
think
cheaper, why not?
Like the Poco M3 is a good example. Like that phone for less than $200. For that price, it is awesome, but it's slow, and you can feel like it's definitely needs a bit more oomph, right? And so that's why these little chips that we are like kind of dismissing, because like Snapdragon 678, that new chip, like we do care because this is what's making the world go round. Like in India, this is what most people will buy. And so I want to see these chips be good enough that experience where we can all now say, it doesn't matter, you don't need an 800 series. You can buy a 700 series phone.
Or a 600 series.
Or 600 to be perfectly happy. Maybe we can say that going forward about a $200 phone. So this is why that stuff is important, and why I put it in the show notes every time I get a chance, because it's like, hey, Anyway, speaking of Qualcomm, the last item on our news list is that they're working with Google to make it easier for OEMs, phone makers, to make their phones updatable longer. So the idea here is that they're going to continue supporting their chips for a longer period of time, which starting with, I think, the 888 and the next generation of chips. And so basically what it means is that if a manufacturer and a carrier decide to make this happen, and hopefully they will, that Google and Qualcomm make it possible for them to get security updates for up to 4 years and up to 3 OS updates. 3 OS updates.
This is so important. One, because Apple supports devices up to 5 years.
Yeah.
The iPhone SE, original iPhone SE can still run iOS 14. So
I know.
The Android world is so embarrassing in terms of getting updates. And it's funny when brands talk about 2 years, I was like, oh, that's still not a lot if you think about it. So this is really good news, because I know a lot of people, definitely not people like you or me, but a lot of people who will hold on to their phones for 3 to 5 years.
Exactly.
And if you spend $1,000 on a smartphone, of course you want to be able to get updates. into the, more than 2 years worth of updates.
Now, I think this is good news, especially with two major players. Like Google makes Android, Qualcomm makes most of the chips.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is like the writing's on the wall if you're a manufacturer right now to get freaking serious about this. We as journalists, YouTube creators, and influencers have been saying this for a long time now, that we're really annoyed with phones that we just don't know the future of, right? Like, because it's not written down somewhere. Like Samsung's finally committed to doing better and are delivering, but even OnePlus is scaling back. And like with the Nord N10 5G and the N100, they shipped with Android 10. And they're only going to get Android 11, nothing beyond that. Mm-hmm. And they're only going to get security updates for 2 years. That's not how you make a OnePlus phone. Like if it was Realme, I wouldn't be so mad because like Realme has no history there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Right. But like OnePlus has been, like claiming off the rooftops forever about this. And so this is why you have to be really careful when you're a company, that you need to listen to your fans. Yes, but you also need to, when you are going to change something that your fans are counting on, that you need to communicate it better, Right. Like there might be a good reason why they are not supporting these phones, because they're in this maybe in-between period where they know they're going to do better next time. And so the phones you really want to buy are the next ones. Right. And so they're not really caring too much about these. These were a stepping stone. Yeah. But I don't know. It still sucks because no matter how much money you spend, you should know that you're getting that support. And Apple is king at that. Like, Theo's just changed from an SE to an SE 2020 this year. Mm-hmm. And the only reason that we didn't keep the original SE going was because they're starting to fall apart because it was so beat up. Yeah. The software was still fine.
Yeah. I bought just for the fun of it. I went on eBay and bought an original SE.
Oh yeah,
and being able to run iOS 14 on it, because that's the last one, and that was from 2016.
Roughly,
something like that. Yeah, so I was like, wow,
that's amazing.
Pretty good, because you want to be able to get all the new features that get announced. No, you want to be able to use your phone, and I mean, and live and sort of run the software and all the apps that people of this year are enjoying. And it's sad that just because you have an older phone, you kind of get left out of the party.
I mean, the challenge obviously nowadays has been band support, right, and stuff. Because one of the other reasons we retired the old SC for Theo was that 600 megahertz band on T-Mobile, which are both T-Mobile customers, is starting to become really critical in LTE, because I use it in a lot of places, and that phone didn't support it. Whereas the new SC supports 600 megahertz, just like my Pixels do and my OnePluses do. So. But listen, we should wrap up.
Yes.
MJ, tell the world out there where they can find you on the internet.
Well, I make videos on YouTube 2 to 3 times a week. It's youtube.com/GadgetMatch, or you can just visit GadgetMatch.com and make it your daily habit.
That's right. I love your tagline. It's so good. Make it your daily habit. That's why you should listen to Michael, Josh, MJ, and the crew at GadgetMatch on YouTube and GadgetMatch.com.
Yes, definitely. If you need help buying a device, well, I'm your guy. I'm your matchmaker.
That's right. Exactly. Well, folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl. That's TNKGRL, like the comic book, but just drop the vowels. That's on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is where you want to go to talk about the show. If you want to ask questions about what we talked about this week, do it on Twitter. Instagram is where you'll find pretty pictures of phones and pretty pictures taken with phones and all that good stuff. Some visual content to go alongside the show. Of course, there's also 2 YouTube channels we have now. We have the main channel, which is youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast, where I have my usual unboxings, hands-on, sometimes reviews. It's mostly just video that matches the content of the show. So if you want to see like that Poco M3, what it looks like, fire up the unboxing video and have a look. And then the new channel is youtube.com/mobiletechmore. We're just getting started with this one, so please subscribe to give us the love. It's going to be mostly, ecosystem type devices. Like we have a robot vacuum coming. We have an air humidifier from Xiaomi. It's actually an air purifier. So check that out. It's a fun channel. And then finally, the podcast itself lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. If you want to subscribe, you can do it there through a bunch of clicks through to the different podcast apps. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, just to name some of the more popular ones. But basically everywhere a good podcast can be found, you'll find the Mobile Tech Podcast. And by the way, if you're using an app that lets you rate or review the show, please rate or review the show. It really helps. And then finally, there's a donate link in the show notes. Click through the show notes, basically the description for this episode, and you'll find a bunch of links, including all the things we discussed today. And the first link is a donate link. It's PayPal. Please help. I would really appreciate it. Finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Audible. Audible has been with us since the very early days, and they're really awesome. And they're here to help you, help us with a great deal. audibletrial.com/mobiletech is the link. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. If you click through, you help Audible, but also you help us. So you don't have to stay with Audible if you don't want to. Although I think you should consider it because it's a pretty great platform.
I have a book recommendation. The new Barack Obama book.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And he reads it to you.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, so that's one of the nice things about Audible is a lot of the authors read their own books, which I think is so nice.
Yes. I have the physical copy, but I listen to the audiobook and then I let him read it to me.
There you go. So that's a good example. And so the deal is basically you get 30-day free trial and you get to keep a book at the end, whether you stay or not. You support the podcast, you support Audible, who have been with us since the early days. As MJ just pointed out, some really great selection of books there. Some of them are pretty epic, like they're reading for 10 hours, 12 hours, and it's really nice a change of format from like a 1-hour podcast. So if you want to get long form stuff in and you want it read to you instead of reading it with your tired eyes, Audible is totally where it's at, and the authors reading their books is just one of my favoriteest things ever. So yeah. So please consider the click through the link, audibletrial.com/mobiletech to help the podcast and help our sponsor. And I want to thank Audible for being with us for, it seems like forever, which is wonderful. And MJ, I want to thank you for being on the show yet again. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Usually we do this in a hotel room somewhere in the world, but this is the next best thing, but it's really nice to see your face.
Absolutely. So that's it, folks. We'll have another show next week. Till then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.